owning your own coffee shop and founding that and you know doing it here in Washington State amidst all the other giants that are here. Man, what was that journey like? Take us a little bit through the ups and downs of those beginning years, even a few months before you actually established Boon Boona.
Yeah, it was really tough. Like, I mean, it was one, I was excited, you know, I was really excited about like, yo, I think I see this lane, I see this space, I see this opportunity, the potential, and I was really excited about it. And I just was like, you know, I think I can do something in this space. And so I just like sat at home really for 2 months and just working on the game plan, knowing that, you know, how likely will it be that I get funded? How likely will it be that people come? I don't know. You know, it's just like, yo, I want to do this thing, and I think this would make sense. And it was with that that I really fueled myself throughout this journey. And to an extent, that's what I still do. You know, it's still that, you know, I think there's something there that allows me to kind of push through a lot of this stuff because, it's not easy. And so, you know, there was also this kind of like, you know, if you can make it here with this crazy idea, then, you know, you can make it anywhere. So it's almost like that. New York, you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere in the world type of thing. Yeah. But if you could do coffee in Seattle, then, you know, maybe you could do it anywhere, but not necessarily the desire, right? I'm not trying to say that I'm trying to go global or something with this. But that's kind of where I was also thinking about it. Like, yo, like, this is a real challenge then, even more so. But I think this thing may work, and if it works here, then it's good. And so, you know, I pushed through a lot of the kind of like initial naysayers and things like that, and I also kept it very guarded too. So I wouldn't share much with most folks. Like I wasn't out there saying, "Oh, I'm doing this thing, I'm doing this thing." It was very much of like, "No, I'm quietly doing this thing. I'm trying to figure this thing out. I'm gonna, you know, poke holes in it." You know, when I did go pitch to the banks, which was at the end of 2011, you know, they're like, no, like, you know, they're like, who are you going to compete? Like, how are you going to compete with these folks? And I was like, that's not my desire. Because, you know, providing that context of like the historical importance of coffee or where it comes from or this traditional approach or, you know, paying a little bit more for coffee. Like this stuff was like crazy, you know, especially at the time because a lot of it was based off of like, you know, how it had been, and I think it's probably good to talk about it from like the American experience of coffee, right? Where, you know, you go from coffee in a can, Maxwell House and things like that, and Folgers, right? And, you know, people just, you know, mocha pots, but like really more of this like, you know, dark coffee, I'm gonna add stuff to it, not really aware of what you're consuming. Like that was the history of coffee. And so it wasn't really something people totally gravitated to. It wasn't until truly like, the big dogs, until the Starbucks came through and it helped kind of move folks into that space now.
Yeah.
But then from that point, it's now gotten to a place where it's like, okay, like I want to know about what country, what region and things like that. But, you know, at the time when I was coming in, obviously it was those big dogs. And even there, it was still very kind of like, you know, we just sourced from Indonesia, you know, Sumatra, it's, you know, Sadamo, and it's very high level. And then even in the quality and the experience of the drink itself, like you're like, this, you know, is okay type of thing. And so it was this place of like, okay, like this is at this point, you could take it further, right? And I think it's just a good way to imagine it or think of it is because I think we've seen that evolution happen a little bit. It's further along in this particular sector, but like in beer, you know, you go from Budweiser, King of Beers, to now like, you know, there's more like smaller breweries popping up or whatnot. Not to this point where it's like microbrewers. I mean, some people brew beer at home, and there's one on every block. And and now as a consumer, right, it's no longer just, you know, just Budweiser or it's just a lager. It's like, oh, you know about IPAs, you know about West Coast IPAs, you know about like you know, porters, you know about, you know, stouts, you know about Hefeweizens, like, you know, the different levels and different styles of beer. So now, no different than wine, where it's just like, oh, white wine or red wine. It's like, no, you know about what region and what, you know, terroir it was, and, you know, what the season might have been like.
Everything.
That kind of level is also found in coffee. It just hadn't been explored or brought to the mainstream. You know, like people hadn't gotten that exposure.
Right.
So as the consumer knowledge becomes greater and as people become more aware of like wine, beer. Now that'll happen as well within coffee. And that's, I think, where we found ourselves in. And I was, all right, that's a little bit more of a kind of a historical perspective and like parallel kind of industries to show where things were at that time and where it's at even now within coffee. And so it was underneath that backdrop where it was like still like the big dogs and, you know, these smaller roasters were just starting to come.
Yeah.
Is where I kind of found myself. And so the thought of like, you know, more specific or, you know, like the fact that people, you know, the bankers or the larger entities were more of like, nah, ain't nobody interested in that level of coffee. Like nobody cares that much about it. I was coming in at that time. And so they didn't care to hear that story. But, you know, that was where I felt like there was opportunity. Like you just persist in there, and that should be the case. And so, yeah, that's kind of the backdrop of where it was at the time. But
wow.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, you know, initially they said no to you, but you persisted, and then as well as the fact that you have a unique story that they probably never heard of, or that gap, that opportunity gap that you saw where, you know, coffee and its history hadn't been really exploited like that. They eventually found it, and they eventually agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they may have.
Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, because from that point on, it was 7 years. And I think that, you know, I think where we look at Boon Boona as like, you know, something that emerged, you know, more recently and, you know, has been at it for a few years in the cafe scene and such. But, you know, prior to that, it was like 7 years. And so really after the rejections, like, you know, I just incorporated. I said, I'm going to reach out to family in Ethiopia. I'm going to source my own coffee. Start bringing that coffee here. And really, I'm just going to focus on my community. And so, you know, first it was just to play with coffee. I was like, if I'm going to get no's, let me go learn more about the craft. And so I started playing with coffee at home. And then that led to like folks being like, oh, like I want your green coffee, the unroasted, the raw coffee that we use for the traditional ceremony. And so I started to become the plug for it. And then that led me to kind of like recognize that maybe I could just start off here with this. And so I started packaging green coffee and distributing it to a lot of the mom and pop grocery stores, the East African grocery stores around the city. And so I did that up until, and we still do that, but like really for those first 7 years, that's all I did. And I would travel. You know, I would go to LA, I'd go to the Bay. If there's a soccer tournament, if there's a festival, Ethiopian festival, Eritrean festival, I'd go to both, pitch a tent, and try selling coffee. And you know, it was labor intensive. It wasn't probably making that much money, but it was like, it was me working on that craft in that area I wanted to be in. And so in that place of like, still like, you know, banks not willing to fund or, you know, still being looked at like, even in the coffee industry, like, oh, who's this guy? What's he doing? He's just selling green coffee. Even in the industry, like, you know, not be considered like part of it. It was an interesting space to kind of be in. And so I had to just kind of keep moving and kind of quietly move to where it is that I wanted to get to. But that was until 2018, 2019 when we opened up our first brick and mortar location, which we did in Renton. But yeah, a lot of that time was, you know, just really, grinding hard.
and people don't, you know, they tend to forget about that too.
Yeah,
There's that aspect in a dream, you know, where
you're not there. Like
you're doing the heavy, you know, you got the brunt of the force, you know, when it's just you.
Yeah. And even, you know, amongst my friends, like I'd be like, yeah, man, I'm trying to do this thing. And they'd be like, oh, like they were all supportive. Like I've had the majority, I would say that I was pretty fortunate that, you know, my family was supportive, you know, my friends were all supportive. They knew what I was trying to do. And they even helped. Like, I'm like, yo, I need to move some Burlap bags, you know, come help me carry, or, yo, can you deliver this?
Yeah.
They would do it. So, you know, I've always been fortunate enough to have family and friends that have been willing to do that, you know, siblings, all of my siblings. Like, so, and my marketing person, which was my mom, like my mom would hype it up, you know, as well. Like, you know, you got to try his coffee and things like that. But, you know, I've been very fortunate in that space. But yeah, you're still also battling with the fact that like you're not at your goal of where you want to be. And at the same time, I'm working my full-time job. It's like, this is not like, this is my side hustle. This is my Friday, Saturday thing, maybe even a little bit on Sunday, like I'm working this. Monday through Friday, I'm at, Nordstrom or Amazon or Holland America, like doing my full-time
Full-time
job.
job, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is the passion project, but, I was just set on doing it. So,
Yeah. Wow.
What is up, y'all? Thank you so much for tuning in to that episode. Make sure to click the subscribe, follow button, as well as the bell to get notified on all my new content that is coming out every Wednesday and every other day. And make sure to click that link in the description down below to get access to all my socials and any other platforms that I have my podcast on. And until next time, y'all, peace.